balancing of model state components. It means that the field what you obtain should really reflect some realistic state. What after that you can apply dynamical equations and integrate. So this relationship what exists between model state components is very important and must be preserved. And all this difficult task should essentially formulation of background focused error covariance to manage to do. So, and the problem is that background focused error covariance model state is of very big dimension. So essentially you cannot estimate that. And one simple way is first one have used something like it's called climatological focused error covariance, but it's essentially nothing with climate to do. It was something of quite simplified structure, what was convenient for us to derive and what was not changing with time. So it would give reasonable behavior on average. I would say possibility to extrapolate information from observations to the model state component could be good on average, but not for the particular case. So that's what essentially not the numerical weather prediction, because in this particular case you are interested. And then the thing is that what one should do is essentially try to construct something which will reflect error of the day uncertainty. And that essentially this work what I have been with this thing connected a lot. And there are two ways how one can try to do that, or estimate or simulate. So, and it was mainly that approach what I have been taking, try to simulate error of the day uncertainty, constructing ensembles which will reflect that uncertainty. And here, very quickly, I want to say that what usually tools data simulation is using, I would say so in principle, all is based on the linear prediction system. So, but these equations, sometimes, because dimensionality of state is very big, sometimes the same problem is simpler to solve through, I would say, optimization technique, constructing a special cost function. And if you have Gaussian problem, and if you have linear observational operator and model state, they will give essentially the same solution. But it's much easier to obtain, I would say, numerically minimize cost function than try to compute all necessary recursions here. So in the case, if, for example, model state is quite linear, so it's not very far away from nonlinear, then one can use tangent linear approximation. So try to solve it for the increment, but not for the whole model state. And in that case, the whole, I would say, theory, cost function is very nice in that case. It's just quadratic, it's easy to minimize. And all theory of Kalman filter can be easily applied in this tangent linear approximation. So essentially, but again, to solve that problem, you can use two methods, or construct cost function and try to minimize it numerically, or for example use Kalman filter theory to obtain it sequentially. So it's essentially a solution to the same problem, but they have two different things. One of them has problem that it requires inverse of this background error covariance, and because it's very big dimension, it's impossible to do that. So it requires quite simple structure in order to obtain that inverse. And here, it's not required so complicated, but still manipulations with the covariance matrix. So that's what we try to do. It's in some way approximate manipulations with the covariance matrix, so that we could use the framework nice for the numerical minimization and at the same time refine information about focused error covariance. That's why it's called hybrid method. So we try to still say something about how covariance matrix develop and try to use nice optimization methods to solve the whole problem. And here it's different approaches how ensemble can be used. So one possibility is just to do a little work and, for example, just try to refine this what we call climatological covariance function. For example, make it not completely isotropic and homogeneous, but allow some variation of some information, geographical, but not changing in time. Another possibility is to allow some structure and try to estimate parameters from the ensemble. And the third possibility is just to try to change variation of cost function itself in order that that's what essentially hybrid method is doing. Because changing the cost function itself, you will change solution to it. So that's one of the first examples when ensemble have been using essentially, and that was produced a type of geographical variation of focused error amplitude. That was something what was estimated from the data. Difference between observed and forecasted values were, I would say, averaged over the whole 1 year period, and one could see that there were areas when really deviation between observed and forecasted are much larger than in the others. So this information can be used afterwards in the focused error covariance to give higher weight to observations which are located in uncertain areas. But they have noticed that the form of this estimate was not very nice, so they apply a type of horizontal filter to that in order to get more smooth structures. So essentially this is the 5 eigenvectors taken from this, the whole, here's 5 these eigenvectors from the whole covariance matrix here. And it gave a much more smoother. But still some nice information here. It's Europa. So it says that uncertainty in these areas of the, for example, sea, on the ocean, and it's higher than, for example, on Europe. Then there is a dense observational network.
Just one question. Did you do some sort of spatial filtering on that one as well? Because the structures, of high magnitude, north of
but
Scandinavia.
Here it was, we can say so that this 5, it's not me who have done this work, it's Magnus, but you can say so it was applied low-pass filter apparatus when you have taken only 5 leading eigenvectors.
Yeah.
So essentially, here it's completely raw, without any spatial averaging, and here you can say so you apply a type of spatial
filtered out the short waves.
The problem is that these innovations are all available in observation.
Yes, it's due to that looks so strange. Yes, it's observation minus errors.
Yeah.
But it's averaged over the whole year period. Yes, so, but they got a very strange, some fluctuation of the ships created such things. But here, for example, is another method that so it's in France, used a lot at Météo France, this approach. So they also provided some ensemble, and they usually created ensemble of data simulation. So, and it's only 6 members. Here is some vorticity, it's a variance of vorticity field. and it's estimated only hit some reference field what they have created, and this was raw ensemble constructed in such a way it's only 6 members. And after that what they have applied, it's simply a spatial averaging. So just for each point define some area and average variance values over the whole that area. So it's just a spatial averaging. And they managed to remove the small scale noise. But spatial averaging in grid point space, it's almost the same like, for example, multiplication in spectral space. Yeah. So, but they have done that in grid point space. And here it was constructed raw ensemble with 220 members. But it's still a lot of some noise you can see. So the spatial averaging really, if you define in a proper way, area can remove a lot of noise. So you can extract clever information even from very small size ensemble.
What is the black grid?
It's just no, this is a whole, it's global model, yes. So it's latitude and longitude in some way that, in order that you would be easy to identify that. So it's nothing special. Just to see what area corresponds to what. And its alternative method was developed by Louis Barré when he have used not essentially spatial averaging, but averaging in the spectral space. He have had a certain multiplication by some, I would say, low-pass filter he have derived, and the properties for that low-pass filter he estimated from ensemble. And the idea he have had was that if you have 2 ensembles, they will be different only created for the same time. They will be different only due to sampling error. So these features, what you can see common in 2 ensembles, that's something right, what you see. All other things should be taken away. And he used a type of regression to estimate the signal-to-noise ratio. But he applied, so here, for example, is the power spectra of the variance for one ensemble and for another ensemble. So they almost similar, but there is some certain difference. And here it's his estimation of the power spectrum of the sampling noise. So, and he said so that here it's the very high sampling noise already. So probably up to this somewhere you get some proper information. But after that sampling noise starts to dominate. So he not simply applied some arbitrary, I'd say, spatial averaging, but he have constructed really optimal spatial averaging and applied it in the spectral space. And the same thing he tried to do even for extracting information for correlation function, because in background, in focused error, variances are very important, but cross correlations, how one model state observation influence another model state component, is that very important. And here, for example, is his estimation of the length scale of correlation function from raw ensemble. It's again 6 members we used. And here, length scale, what he managed to obtain after he have used wavelet averaging. So you really can see that there is some pattern what he managed to get much more clearly, even from a very small ensemble size, where he almost can see most of the noise only on the upper. And again, they try also to get estimate autocorrelation functions using wavelet method, and they have get that their estimate of autocorrelations became flow dependent. So it's really different. Here is the flow situation, 500 hectopascal. So these scales, they became different for depending on flow situation. That essentially what one would like to obtain. And that experiment was done for limited area models, where variants are more difficult to apply. And we have used another method when we did not try to estimate like that parameters, but we mainly tried to use the whole information like given what is in our ensemble and construct something which is able to extract some clever information from it. So we simply modify cost function so that allow to have additional term. And this additional term was specified in, I would say, structures which ensemble has. It's like some structure functions additional we put in and allow minimization procedure to determine what it wants to take from that.
Is it a background term or is it?
So
Can we consider that a background term on this additional term?
you can say so that it's like this is a background.
The background is included in there. Okay, so.
Yeah, and this is additional, one can say, background term in a certain sense. And this is, so you put additional constraint on how close it should come, not only to observation, but it also should fit the structures what you see in ensemble.
Okay, but what, maybe you said it, what is the structure of alpha? What is its dimension in alpha?
Okay, so.
Okay, maybe you will say it.
Yeah. This is how this additional term looks like. It looks very similar to how it looks term for variational data assimilation. So this is additional control variables because one of the important things is that it must be of full rank system, of full dimension, in order that you would manage to minimize it numerically. Else it will not minimize. Due to that you cannot bring estimation of the, if you have limited amount of ensemble members, focus error covariance is always rank deficient. So you cannot get it directly into cost function, you will not manage to minimize. So you get another control variables term which have a certain relation to your ensemble. So, and we have done in a quite simple way. It's I would say, two-dimensional field. This is two-dimensional field of control, new control vectors, and here it's some requirement of the smoothness of these two-dimensional fields. So it will not allow to have, you can put different, I would say depending on what you put here, it will penalize, for example, more some high frequency oscillations or low frequency oscillations. You can say what scales you want to be most represented here by, yeah, but it's like in a, so put in sort of constraint on this term, because it's like in usual variational assimilation what you get. You put some requirement on covariance and then certain scales will be represented. And the result of all that will give that increment will contain something would not depend on flow and something would depend on flow expressed in your ensemble. So it depends certainly how good this expression will depend how good is ensemble to represent uncertainty. But at least it can get some valuable information what we have seen. Yeah, so this matrix is quite arbitrary, everything that is in spectral space. So it's diagonal matrix which has certain spectrum. And we have noticed that it's better that it's not too that it allows larger scales.
Just want to ask, isn't this weighted mean of the two? Because you have these beta terms, or it should be just the sum of 3D var plus ensemble
Yeah,
conditions.
I would say so that we wanted to, in cost function here, like you can see, it's something that would correspond to the variance.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to conserve variance.
Okay, this alpha then weights with
So one can see that these terms together, due to that they sum to, we wanted to conserve variance term.
yes.
So due to that it's inverse of the weight.
No.
Okay, but I want to say, if you don't have any ensemble, then you would have delta x of 3D bar. But if you add an ensemble, are you going to add the correction?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. So that's how it works.
Because alpha can be also negative, that's why.
Yes, it's not necessarily positive.
Okay.
It
makes
can
sense.
be negative,
Sorry, yes.
but it's a two-dimensional field, which is positive somewhere and negative somewhere. In some places it's add ensemble, in some places it's, I would say, subtract ensemble members, and in such way it gets some information. I would say so it's converged to something which is more positive than negative. Yeah, especially if you allow a reasonably large scale. So, yes.
It's a little surprising that he just considered the horizontal autocorrelation as opposed to looking at cross correlations as well.
Sorry?
It says empirical matrix A contains a spectral density of the horizontal autocorrelation of the alpha fields, but wouldn't one expect to have the cross correlations in there too?
You know, we have done in the easiest way possible, yes? So, up to now we have assumed homogeneous and isotropic field for this alpha weight. So, it's not necessary that that is non-homogeneous and anisotropic. So even if I allow weights to be homogeneous and isotropic, the total impact will not necessarily be homogeneous and isotropic. But if it is isotropic and homogeneous in spectral space, I don't need to have cross correlations. So it's diagonal in a certain sense. But certainly one could go more and, for example, allow cross correlations between different, and that we have not done. So we went to the simplest possible thing. We almost like say that impact from one ensemble not influence impact from another ensemble member. And that's simplification, of course. And another thing that we have used the same weighting functions through the whole vertical and for all type of model state components. So it's also bad things. One can say one should refine, but this was the simplest what we decided to do first. And then we tried this system with 3 different ensemble techniques. We have generated ensembles using 3 different techniques. So one of them is based, it's global ensemble based on singular vectors. And here it was ensemble based on, I would say it's deterministic square root construction of ensemble. So it's roughly, you have focus perturbations and then you rescale them to analysis perturbations. So it's based on ensemble transform Kalman filter scheme. Yeah, so, which we have been working a lot on that to make it more, I would say, flexible. Essentially, it has both multiplicative and additive inflation. So it's every time we go from focus perturbations to analysis perturbations, we add some additive noise. And this additive noise has structures of focused error covariance. So, and here it was the fourth ensemble method, which was used a lot at Petio runs, it's ensemble of data assimilation runs. So you something like do data assimilation, then you simulate observations by perturbing them with statistics of observation error, and assimilate these perturbed observations, and then you will get difference, which will give to you some type of ensemble. So there are three, so you can see, so here it's mainly dynamics, singular vectors. Here it's used both dynamics and observational network, but how well it's used, it depends on ensemble size, and we have small ensemble size. And here it's just observational network mainly used. Yeah, and that's what we consider. It gives got a quite good result with this. All essentially ensemble methods gave, when we use hybrid method, it gave improvement for each ensemble generation technique. So, and that's what we consider. Why? Because important thing that we have seen that it's completely anisotropic structures which are represented by ensemble, and there is an important relationship it reflects which exists between large-scale forcing and small development, small-scale developments. And here it just so just a simple illustration. This is a flow situation. It's 300 hectopascal, very nice, say, meandering flow. And here is correspondent 800 hectopascal temperature, how it looks like. And this is the variance what ensemble transform Simon systems have given to that case. So it's really was quite nice flow dependent. But interesting is that it's very anisotropic really. Here, for example, is variance for the temperature, and here is variance for the humidity field. So, and it really has a connection with flow, I would say, with strong positions, and like that. So ensemble can catch that. And then what we have got, this, for example, for the comparison, improvement of four-dimensional variational data assimilation, which essentially can implicitly build flow-dependent covariance over three-dimensional variational data assimilation. And our hybrid methods, they have gave approximately the same level of improvement. And we have seen on some, they, for example, have got a quite large improvement for prediction of cloudiness. So, and for example, sea surface pressure, also ensemble methods, they give much smaller error. But, so, and in the case for time series we have analyzed, it also gave a certain improvement. But then we have seen that we have got a very bad setting of our experiment, which a lot of things were wrong. So if we would run it correctly, maybe it would be even better. And then we try to understand what really gave this improvement. So it mainly was better prediction over surface pressure, essentially in this area. So even with these fields, here it's just three-dimensional, without a hybrid method, and here it's using this flow-dependent covariance, as one can say. And these fields, they look very similar to each other, but they're a little bit different, and it's enough to give a very big difference in root mean square score. And then we wanted to know what really gives that improvement. And we have noticed that it came several days in advance in treatment of observations close to the front. area. So, and it essentially was just improved treatment of observations in this small area. The initial fields looks very, very similar, but they developed afterward to quite different things.
And what were the betas for your 3D var versus ETKF pieces of the cost function?
Sorry?
The beta, the relative weighting between...
Half.
They were half, so
Half.
they're equally weighted. Okay, yeah.
Equally weighted, yes. Yeah, for this experiment. Yeah.
You can say that we tried.
We
10,
tried
10, 90,
another.
90, 10 also. But the 50-50
Was the best.
Yeah.
So, and so we have seen that differences what comes. It's really by the construction of analysis field close to the frontal areas. And these areas are very difficult for dimensional variational data assimilation because it has isotropic assumptions on structures. It always tries to, when we insert observations, it tries to propagate the information from it in such isotropic way, which completely not suit the situation when you have front. So it really destroys front all the time, three-dimensional variational data assimilation. And then we have had hybrid method, and when we look on increment, which were obtained with that, we have seen that here it's just three-dimensional assimilation. So in these frontal areas, you don't see them at all. But when you use a hybrid method, so flow-dependent covariance, you really see the increment which follows structures of the front. So, and that was really these small differences that gave improvement, because they really follow the situation and make structures much more natural. And then we have seen on cross sections what is the increment from observations, how it propagates, and this how it looks like for three-dimensional variational assimilation. There are some global features, there is some jet stream which goes here, so observation came here, it analyzes increment, it really influences around. But here how it looks like when you have flow-dependent covariances. So increment really propagates along the, I would say, flow. And its flow imposes what structures you have. And this was used, this ETKF technique. And that singular vectors, and here it's even ensemble of data assimilation runs, all of them essentially have flow-dependent propagation of the increment. Yeah. And here just, so we were very happy to see that it really works like it should. And here just like illustration how look like this ensemble what we have been using. This is singular vectors. Its global ensembles are just targeted over that area. So one can see that some features, it's a surface pressure field. So in some areas, field is very similar, but in other areas, field is quite different. And this is what is really this important flow-dependent situation is. And that was essentially a case of polar law, a very, very angry small systems which develop when Arctic air comes over open water, and then they attack Norway and destroy a lot of things. So, and you can see that ensemble, it really says that this here are this uncertain information. And here we have had this another, so ETKF ensemble, and here it's even this ensemble of data assimilation runs. So all these look reasonably, they're different, but they have the similar type of information in themselves. And this hybrid method what we use is really able to extract this flow-dependent information. So we were very happy about that. And that's our conclusions. So I have been working a lot with ETKF, so these two other systems, they're not so well tuned. So maybe they would give also very good performance. Yeah, but at least what is important thing is that this hybrid way to modify post function helps to extract flow dependent information. Yeah, and that's all.
Okay, please. Yelena, can you come back to your slides where you may work with the expression of the augmented objective function with alphas and the reference to Lawrence? Okay. Well, first of all, here to define the A or the alpha, you need an ensemble. This is built on an ensemble which that is already available in the first place. Am I all right? The second term, the B ensemble term, requires an ensemble.
Yes, and he's here.
Then this defines the state, not an ensemble. So maybe you said it, but how do you regenerate an ensemble for the next step?
Yeah, how I regenerate the ensemble.
Oh, yes. In this approach, in the pure ensemble, how do you regenerate an ensemble?
Yeah, it's these three methods what I said.
Well, you say, okay, you use any of the three.
But in a certain sense, I have been using different techniques to generate that ensemble.
And so, okay.
One of them was, for example, this ETKF ensemble when I...
For instance, ETKF, because on the results you had ensemble plus ETKF and plus ensemble DA. So,
yeah.
What do you mean? Maybe I missed something, I must have missed something, but what is ensemble DA in respect to? Okay.
So these were different ensemble techniques what I have been using. Yes, so one what I have been using, for example, I just took singular vectors based ensemble. Yeah, it's global ensemble.
Yes.
But this, for example, ensemble, it's not global. It's constructed for my limited area model. And it's based on such idea that you take focus perturbations, then you construct a scaling matrix, how your focus uncertainty will be reduced. And how good it is. Yeah, it's difficult to see, because it can be very good if you have a lot of ensemble members. But it's a small amount of ensemble members. You certainly you see only these directions what you have in ensemble members. Yeah. So, but at least it also works. So it gives some answer. And this is ensemble of data assimilation run. So essentially, I have data assimilation just like it is with observations when I perturb observations.
Yes.
So, and I assimilate them.
Okay.
And I assimilate them in, yeah, I will assimilate them around this perturb. So I start with some field, and I sample ensemble around. And after that, I will assimilate my perturbed observation around perturbed control.
But when you say assimilate, do you assimilate with the alpha term, with the beta n term, or without it?
Yes, with.
With. Okay.
With, yes.
Okay, so.
So it's in hybrid mode.
Okay. Okay. So, do you know if that would be different from another approach, given that you have an ensemble of backgrounds, wherever it comes from? One thing that one can be done, that some people do, is then to perturb the observations according to the assumed probability of.
Yeah.
And then for each couple of background and perturbation, you run an assimilation. And this gives you an ensemble of assimilation.
Yeah, but that is.
Do you know how different it would be? Or how unknown? What can you say about that? About comparison?
No, but yeah. I think it's in principle similar what I am doing. The
Yes,
only
right.
thing what I am doing is that I also use that information after that in the assimilation procedure itself.
Yes.
Yes? So, but if you, because what, I know, I'm not so good in English. So
But the last one is exactly what ECMWF does.
This is
They
exactly
prepare
what
observations and run assimilation for each member.
Yes, this is what I said.
Yes,
This-
yes.
the
What
word
difference
yes.
is that we also apply hybrid. We use the ensemble in the weights.
Well, it's not exactly the same thing, because here you have this additional beta and stir,
yeah.
which is not in what I said.
No,
So
no.
it's not exactly the same thing.
No.
So
But
that,
do you know how different it would be? I mean, you know.
yeah, I don't know because I cannot say that.
Yes.
I think so still in order to get flow dependent information you need in some way, for example, I know that such approach Luik Bear is using, and he tries to estimate from that ensemble some parameters.
Well, in what I said, the information of dependence on the situation is given by the ensemble of backgrounds. There is an ensemble of backgrounds which are produced for some process, for instance, by integration.
Yeah, but that is also here because you have ensemble here. I'm sorry if I don't understand what no, but it's in a sense that when I again after that I apply a totally dynamical model. And then what I use, it's not essentially this ensemble of data assimilation, but it's rather ensemble of data assimilation runs evolved by dynamical method. So that's what I am using after that in my covariance matrix. But if I don't use that information, I don't know how to bring flow-dependent information in. So there must be something, or you need to estimate some parameters from that ensemble which have...
In what I said, flow dependence is introduced by the ensemble generated by the assimilation, which can then be used as a background for... Since the system produces an ensemble, the flow dependence is produced by, is contained in the ensemble, in the ensemble produced by the process.
I would say so it's two things which are important. It's important how you assimilate.
Yes.
So how you propagate information from observations to another component.
Yes.
That's important. They need to follow some structures which have developed of the current flow. But also it's important dynamical evolution after that of this ensemble. That's what it says. Yeah. So it's not only, I would say it's not only the create ensemble, it's not only data assimilation, it's also dynamics, yes?
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. That's helped me a lot too. But then it's a little bit contradictory, the results from the ensemble of data assimilation runs, when you show the vertical structure of the increments, and you saw that there was considerable dynamics in the ETKF and, that one, and the TPS increments. But with the ENS-DA, there doesn't seem to be very much dynamics that is different from 3D VAR. But it looks like that increment in the bottom right is very similar to the increment in the top left. And so that had me thinking that there isn't dynamics in the background error covariance matrix for the bottom right.
But I would say so that this at least, you can say so
it's
that...
a little more tilted, I guess.
It's not the tuning.
This
was the
it's just a weak...
we need to more inflate it.
It's just a weak correction.
It's of course problem, and I said so that with that I have been working a lot.
Right.
With this I have not been working so much. But what for me was important to see that it starts to tilt.
Okay.
So that was tilting a little bit. So without dynamics it would not be able to tilt. So it means so, but of course one could say so that maybe ensemble of data assimilation run you introduce perturbations each 6 hours and grow them only over 6 hours. So maybe it's a bit weak relation to the, I would say, dynamics. Because in this method, you roughly like a type of breeding, you more consistently grow. So this is very cheaply to implement, essentially. Of course, it's costly in a sense that you need to run data assimilation systems, but you don't need to change a lot. If you have 3D VAR, you can very easy to run it in ensemble mode. Yeah, of course you need to put work in order to introduce the hybrid into that. Here it's require a little bit more work. Yeah, so, but at least, of course, I would say so that this is very weak dynamical figure. But I again say that I have been working very little with that, and then we noticed one very special thing, that in Ireland it seems so that observational error variance is not well tuned. It seems so that it's not completely representing what really is observational error variance. So that could give also, we should better tune that. But at least this was tilting, and I was happy to see that. And you can see that here, for example, singular vectors. It's very well seen dynamical structures, yes. So, but that's what I have got with CTKF.
So I have a question. Your beta parameters, so they are predefined. They are not part of the control vector. So you don't estimate them by minimization.
No.
So if it is the case, if this all is linear, if you would split into two 3D VAR cost functions and minimize each of them, and then simply add the weighted mean, make corrections, would it then give us a similar result?
So you mean so that you want to estimate first parameters, and
So
then...
Well, you first make a minimization as your traditional 3D VAR, and then you make a minimization by using only, by substituting your, instead of using your background error covariances, you use this which you weight by alpha parameters, and because alpha, I guess, is simply a localization. Actually, what in common filter is the localization.
Yes, it's true. It's localization. I don't know. I cannot say, but I would say so that here I augment control vector space. So, and I make it bigger.
Yes.
If I would have completely linear problem, probably results should be the same. You could minimize, you could construct part of the problem, and then you could minimize.
Your only nonlinearity is in the observational operator.
Yes, but yes, it's in print because post function itself is constructed to be completely quadratic, at least how it was used here. But if one go to a more realistic application, it's not completely quadratic. So that would not be yeah, because what in realistic application it does is essentially you solve non-linear problem. You use a type of outer loops, what they call. So you only solve quadratic problem, then you obtain solution, then you re-linearize around this solution. So as it's the aim, essentially, but I fix it, we have linear problem, exactly linear, then you can split control vector space. Because I would think so, but I never tried it.
No, I'm just now.
But the thing also is that I have problem, at least with this formulation here. I have problem because I use the same with the, so I don't know. It would be interesting to try to see.
Do you intend to extend that to 40 bar?
Sorry?
Do you intend
Yes.
to extend that to 40 bar?
The experience at Met Office was that with 3 bar you gain a lot with it, but with 4 bar you gain less, because 4 bar already has.
Okay, because 40 bar already has the flow dependence. But because it's only over the estimation period, it doesn't have it in its present form on the background at the beginning, initial time of the estimation period.
So ideally, if one could construct it in a clever way, it should add information, because you would use this flow-dependent covariance matrix in the beginning of data assimilation cycle by 40 bar. But yeah, we will do that and we will look on the results. So we completely intend to do that. But it's another problem is that run ensemble is expensive thing. So maybe 40 bar without ensemble will give almost the similar quality, and then you.
40 bar gives only one estimate. It doesn't give an ensemble of estimates. Ideally, what we want to do is to do Bayesian estimation. That is to estimate a probability distribution. One isolated estimate is not a probability distribution. Oh, you're right, but that makes no sense. So ideally, what we want
won't have ensemble.
is
Yes,
dispersion.
physically one want to have ensemble, but then one should question that what we also start to discuss a lot. What of this method one should use? Because I would say, so my idea is that ETKF is not very well suited for sampling of uncertainty, because it's like, it's good to estimate focused error covariance, but it's not good to represent uncertainty, because it's like, it's very deterministic way, just certain selected, after that you need to do something with it. So maybe that method even better, in a sense that that's what we're working now on, trying to understand these things, how it's performing, like, for example, ensemble prediction system. Yeah.
Have you tried it, or do you intend to try it? That approach, for instance, in the 4 bar temporal dimension and the simple model and joint models. I mean, no, it's a very simple model, and one of many Lorentz model, or on the simple meteorological, not in the full-fledged meteorological model, but something which is much more economical, and you know the truth that the dynamically and you can deal with all parameters in your system.
We try to start collaboration now with one, I would say, bank, from what we can get, maybe realistic but small dimensional model.
Yes, at least you fully understand what
yes.
it is.
Yeah, so that's what we probably will do. But else, it's such a, I would say, amusement to manage this complicated system, to put things where you really need and get some results that really I'm so happy doing that. So that, and yeah. But certainly to study such things, it's much easier to do on simpler models, but they must be realistic, and, you know, we're very restricted to where we're allowed to put our, I would say, funds. So we need to have some good project, which, yeah, must be somebody interested in. I must work for Norwegian Meteorological Institute and to work for them. So it must be something useful after that for the application. But we try to get contact with some, for example, economy. We have very non-linear models, very uncertain models, when we really can work a lot in that sense. Yes. So.
More questions?